In this video, we are going to learn about setting up quadratic equations from applications, word problems. If you would like to practice solving quadratic equations, you will need to watch those videos. Let's get started. The general quadratic equation in standard form looks like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a does not equal 0. If a was equal to 0, I would have 0 times x squared, which is just 0. I would not have a quadratic equation. I would have a linear equation. So a cannot equal 0. Let's try this problem. The length of a rectangular sign is 3 feet longer than the width. If the sign's area is 54 square feet, find its length and width. Now, sometimes with word problems, you may need to read it 2 or 3 times to decipher what information you have and what information you need. I do see that this sign is rectangular, and the area of the sign is 54 square feet. Now he says the length is 3 feet longer than the width. It's talking about the length. I know nothing about the width. Let x equal the width. And if x is the width, I know that the length is 3 feet longer than the width. The width is x. So x plus 3 will be the length. So I have the length, I have the width, and I have the area of this rectangular sign. And I know that the area of a rectangle is equal to the length times the width. Or I could say the length times the width is equal to the area. Let's set up this quadratic equation. I need to multiply the length times the width, and that will equal the area. So I will have x times x plus 3 equals 54. This is our quadratic equation. Let's do a little math to put it in standard form. When I do the distributive property, x times x is x squared, x times 3 is 3x, and that will equal 54. In quadratic equations, we want everything on one side. We want it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 54 from both sides. I now have x squared plus 3x minus 54 equals 0. This is a quadratic equation in standard form. In this equation, my a is equal to 1. My b is equal to 3, and c is equal to negative 54. Let's try another one. For televisions, the length of the screen's diagonal is used to describe the TV. If a television has a width of 48 inches and the height is 6 more than half the length of the diagonal, what is the length of the diagonal? Okay, what do we know? We know we have a television, and we are talking about the diagonal, but we have no idea how long the diagonal is. So we can let x equal the length of the diagonal. Okay, I know that the width of the television is 48 inches. I do not know what the height is, but it does say that the height is 6 more than half the length of the diagonal. Well, half the length of the diagonal is 1/2 times the length of the diagonal, but it says it's 6 more than that. So the height will be 1/2 x plus 6. I can represent this problem as a right triangle. The lengths of the legs are 1/2 x plus 6 for one leg and 48 for the second leg. And the hypotenuse of this right triangle is x. I can use the Pythagorean theorem to help me solve this. A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. A and b are the legs of the right triangle. C is the hypotenuse. So I will take one leg and square it. I will take the other leg, 48, and square that. And that is equal to the hypotenuse squared. This is my equation. Now let's work to get this in standard form. I have a binomial squared, so I will need to use FOIL. And then I squared 48. I got 2,304, and that is equal to x squared. I can combine 36 and 2,304, and now let's get everything on one side. I am going to choose to subtract x squared from both sides. Now watch carefully, this equation's getting a little messy. But I do have 1/4 x squared and a -1 x squared. My equation is now -3/4 x squared plus 6x plus 2,340 equals 0. This is a quadratic equation. Everything is on one side. But I am going to choose to get rid of this fraction and also to make my x squared coefficient positive. In order to get rid of this fraction and the negative, I'm going to multiply both sides by -4. We have now set up this quadratic equation. So in this video, we practice setting up quadratic equations. Be sure to watch the videos on solving quadratic equations.